Welcome to One on One. And I can't help it that I look like this. I'm an Olympic groupie. I have Sky, and I have watched everything from wrestling to synchronised swimming to equestrian and all the good stuff as well. So, who to interview this week? Now, a year ago, when I first started doing this, I brought in the wonderful Hugh Pavletich, and he has got the biggest hits on YouTube for the show that we did. He's kind of controversial. So I'm going to bring him back today to talk to me and see if he's behaving himself a little bit more. Welcome to the program, Hugh.
Thank you very much for having me, Jo.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, let's go straight to this. I think it's a myth. We talked about this last time, affordable housing. Now, here in Christchurch, we have an opportunity. I believe we have an opportunity because we have special powers where a minister can do everything. Why? Why on earth are we not reaching a market where people have lost equity in their homes and what have you, that actually has a bit of a social conscience? Wasn't there an opportunity here?
There was right from day one, Jo. And in fact, I wrote in the Herald soon after the first event, September 10, that they had to open up land as quickly as possible to get the construction industry underway. And if they'd done that, we would have had at least another 6,000 new homes, affordable homes, out on the fringes of Christchurch. And when I talk about affordable, I'm talking about sections at $50,000 each, putting a new home on top of that at $150,000, and getting packages out to people for $200,000, $250,000. That's what should have been a priority from day one. And I'll tell you, Jo, something that really impressed me just the other day was the Bishop of Christchurch coming out and saying, really, we need to prioritise these types of things. But I mean, we're talking nearly 2 years later.
Oh, well, she needs a few runs on the board, however, and not dismissing that social conscience. Now, all right, so we had the Greater Urban Development Study, you know, which I think is a foundation document. It actually set out how you should plan. You believe the borders should be open. Tell me why.
Well, there's no reason to starve land supply on the fringes of Christchurch, Jo. We've got ample land. And the amount of land we'd use in a year just for standard construction of housing is infinitesimal.
But Hugh, it's not just about land and putting poor old Johnny. And if we're talking about social housing or cheaper housing,
that's right.
Why would you put the family of four way out on the fridges that then has to travel to schools, for health services, for all those things that won't be out there that you would need to service the communities?
Well, that's really just a load of cobs wallop, if you like, really, Jo. Because the fact of the matter is, the services and all the rest of it, and the schools and all the rest of it follow the people, and that's how Christchurch expanded. You know, we've done it for 150 years, but all of a sudden, just in the last lot of years, it's all become such a big problem. The reason why it's a big problem is that the local government costs have got out of control and they can't cope with normal growth. So this whole sort of strangling the supply of the city, hoisting section prices up from 30 to 50,000 up through to 200,000 plus, just by, if you like, creating artificial scarcity values, that's not helping anyone. So the fringes are very, very important to be able to supply affordable housing.
So if the UDS kind of had the areas of land that was enough, and then Waimak and so on, so we have an earthquake, and then suddenly all tracts of land are opening up all over the place. You know, is it favourites or is it first in, first served? Do you favour the move that the lands are starting to open up all over the place?
Well, it has opened, Jo, but not sufficiently. And the only real measure of that, you know, we can argue till the cows come home about whether there's sufficient land or not. The only measure is price. Have the prices come down? Now, if there's sufficient supply, they would be affordable. But there isn't sufficient supply, clearly.
So when you mean it to become affordable, if we used one of the developments that has made very, very small sections and put very, very small houses, is that what you mean by affordable?
No, not at all. See, in North America, this is to give you an idea of just how bad things here are in New Zealand. And of course, as a co-author of the annual Demographia survey, we study this very closely. But the fact is that in North America, you can buy a house all up, a starter home on the fringes, for about $600 US a metre. Here on the fringes of Christchurch, it's sitting up at about $2,500 New Zealand. So what we've really got, when you adjust for currency differences and all the rest of it, we were paying, at least for a 200 square metre home, another $300,000 more than what we should be.
So you have this Demographic International Housing Affordability Survey. What information goes into that to get the answer at the end?
Well, that's something that we brought out, an American colleague and I, it was back in the early of 2005, the first one, and the 8th survey came out this year. But what it does is covers all the major cities of the English-speaking world. That's the United Kingdom, Ireland, Canada, the United States, Australia, New Zealand. We put in Hong Kong over the last couple of years as well. But what it uses is the median multiple. So it divides the median house price by the median household gross income of all the cities that are covered. There's 325 of them. And it's become the sort of gold standard, if you like, Joe, this whole measure. And unfortunately, Christchurch rates is severely unaffordable at 6.3 times earnings. You should be able to buy a house at or below 3 times your household earnings.
So what has to happen? Like, what is the answer here now? What would you do, or if somebody said, all right, Hugh, here's
what we should do. Here's what we should do, is open up the fringes of Christchurch. There is no need whatsoever to starve land supply and bring the prices back, the raw land prices back to close to their true rural values. So that then allows, if you like, takes out about $1 million a hectare of artificial value that's there at the moment. And there's about 500,000 of artificial value, say, on the fringes of Rolleston.
But don't we just become like Auckland, just spread ourselves out without
Not at all.
that?
We're a very, very small country, Joe. You know, we're the same size roughly as the United Kingdom, with our 4.4 million people, and they've got 62 million people over there.
But have you tried to drive to Rolleston and peak hour traffic? Have you realised what's actually happening?
That's a transport problem.
Yeah, and so you're saying you plan around that.
We're a tiny city.
Yeah, okay.
We're a tiny city in global terms.
Yeah.
370,000 people. We're hardly a blip on the planet.
So all right, if we look at what's actually happening here at the moment, and we've got these developers, I don't know whether it's first in, first served, I don't know how one gets in and the other ones have to wait and what have you. Will that artificially drive down the market, or will they sit on that land?
Well, there's nothing artificial about driving down the market. It's being held up artificially by politicians and planners starving the supply. And if you like, these guys who own it, understandably, are just drip feeding it onto the market.
Can they afford to wait though? Like,
oh yes, they can. Oh yes,
really?
Too right, they will. They'll do whatever it takes to, if the planners allow them and starve the land supply. It's in these guys' interest to hold those land prices up as high as they can, and that's exactly what they're doing. So when they're releasing subdivisions, they're just dribbling the stuff out on the market, just anything to hold that price up. So what the planners and the politicians have got to do is move those black lines or get rid of them, and if you like, so that there's no scarcity value, Joe, and these guys then have to start supplying sections at market prices.
So I think that means you don't have any planned. I'll be back.
Oh yes, you do.
I'll be back after the break to see why you would do that. Welcome back, where I'm talking to Hugh Pavletich. And he's been a property developer most of his life, but he's now become a bit of a political activist. That's why I could call you that. But before we go there, we just left before the break and said, oh, don't you need a plan? Now, we have a plan for the city central, the blueprint. What are your thoughts on the plan?
Unfortunately, it's rubbish, Joe. That's all I can say as a developer, experienced developer, that it's just not workable. And the guys who put the thing together, frankly, don't know the first thing about development. Now, it was a marvellous marketing exercise, and everybody left feeling good and wonderful about it all on the Monday night. But once they start getting into it and starting to look at the economic viability of everything and how it's all going to work, I think they're going to be very disappointed. Okay,
everybody always says, the devil's in the detail, and so when you go in and have a look and you look for the economic analysis, still to be done, the feasibility's done, haven't been done, there's got to be a risk in that, because it's been sold to the world now as this is Christchurch blueprint.
Well, it has, but it's only sort of a blueprint and an indicator, if you like, early indicator. And yet we know for a fact that there's been some costings done here in Christchurch that have been fed through Sarah, fed up to Treasury. And I'm really surprised, Joe, that the media hasn't got onto all that stuff and extracted it. None of that stuff came out on the Monday. That should have done. The people who are the ones who are going to be doing the paying here in Christchurch, they have a right to know that. Now, my understanding is that these costs could quite easily blow out from 800 to 1.6 billion. Easy. And all the rest of it too.
Well, I think we've forgotten that, if we just look at the contribution that the City Council has put in their rates, whether it's 8.63, they've still got 100 and something million to find for the rockfall, and they've got this 155 million. And it's based on what? I mean, there's no figures there. I guess, do you think it's I mean, if you go and have a look, and I went in and started to read, and I saw that these analyses haven't been done, but what about this green zone? So as a developer, if you, well, I won't use the word artificial, but they're creating an area, eight zones. Will people be able to afford 8 blocks? Will people be able to afford to actually pay the rents or build in there?
We must, I think, refer to them as a very light green, Joe, because the fact of the matter is they're not going to change the zoning from commercial.
No, it is actually zoned commercial. It's not even zoned reserve land.
No, not even. And they've got no intention of doing it either.
It's a 10-year lifestyle. So I think, do you think that's a sop to the community? They all think, oh, it's all going to be lovely and green. But what, I mean, let's go back. So they've got these 8 blocks, which have got these big anchor, well, they call them these anchor projects. I don't know what they're anchoring. But however, if you were to develop in there, the price per square meterage has got to be huge.
Well, I understand the people that I'm talking to within the industry, and there's a lot of them, that to make anything work in there, you're going to have to be charging higher than Auckland and Wellington rents. So if you like, Christchurch is a poor city in comparison to Auckland, where our median household income is just $56,000 a year, Auckland 72,000. So how does that work? Of course it doesn't. The economics are simply not there. And we shouldn't refer to those projects as anchor projects at all. That's very, very wrong. Like a supermarket in a shopping centre is an anchor because it attracts more traffic. But though you can't say the same thing about convention centres and stadia. That's just completely wrong. They should really be referred to as commercial repellents.
So I guess the idea was that there was inertia, things weren't moving. So Sarah and the government did this 100-day plan. Is it really to show the investors or some confidence that we actually know what we're doing? I mean, is this a workable plan?
Well, unfortunately, there's always been the problem with the council. And this is why Sarah is so intrusive, of course, here in Christchurch. It's been stripping the powers of the council because we knew from day one, the government knew from day one, that the council was dysfunctional. So that was never going to go anywhere. So Sarah and the government decided to take the whole thing over. But I think that they've made even a bigger hash of it than the council. So I think once we start seeing the numbers and the realities, we've seen all the wonderful marketing that was done the other Monday night, but once the figures all start coming up and once people see what it's all going to cost them as ratepayers, I think the mood is going to change hugely.
Now, part of your Cantabrians Unite, and it's trying to get a voice for the people, I'm wondering, that, if anybody kind of talks out and be very good at it.
That's right.
You're seen as the expressions are naysayers, or you're negative, or you don't understand the complexity. Is our community that stupid?
No, not at all. And I never underestimate the intelligence of the public, Joe. And we get all these sort of snipes about you being negative if you criticise this or you criticise that. But as a commercial property developer for 30 years, a former industry leader and all the rest of it, as far as I'm concerned, I have a sort of a public duty to tell it like it is. You won't get any of the sugar-coated stuff from me. If you want all that, you go to the Chamber of Commerce. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But no, you get it straight down the line.
They're certainly seeing things in a different world. And I suppose, to be fair, they're talking it up. But there is the R word, and it's called reality. Now, people are living in reality. And I don't understand sometimes why, and I understand confidence, what have you, but people aren't stupid. And even when we show it on our TV screens or we show it in our newspapers, the rest of the world are watching us as well. And do you think that we run the risk of disempowering our people here?
Oh, most definitely. And that's been one of the major problems from word go. And this is why Cantabrians Unite was actually got in place after the protests there on the 1st of February this year. If you like, to highlight the 5 key objectives. That was to get an early election, to get the changes underway, have a change of chief executive, that was point 2. Point 3, change the structure of the council from a central model to a one city, many communities approach. Point 4, deal with the land supply, get affordable land out there. And number 5, get affordable rates. There are our 5 key objectives.
Okay, if you look at the first 2, forget the elections. They're not going to do that. They're going to hang them in there, give them whoever they need. I think I made an expression, hold hands and kumbaya. Some of them are actually even frightened to talk out. And there's a big difference between advocating for your community as their representative and then actually being told to shut up, you know, and being scared in case something's going to happen. I mean, I would say get over it and start working for your community. Tony Marriott, he's, what do they call it, those Klingons, you know, he's there for and it's only a 2-year, and watch that space. We've talked about the affordable housing that's not happening. So where do you kind of get your mandate from? Who are your people? Do you feel that you've got enough people, or is it, you know, are you just being seen as just being negative because you've all got nothing else better to do?
No, bear in mind I was a developer in my earlier life, Joe, and to be a developer and go through all the hassles, you have to be very positive and driven to get to achieve things. And so we're actually a very positive bunch of people, if you like. And those objectives that we've got in place are indeed, should be seen in a very positive light, because there are big problems out there. And basically just putting our heads under the pillows or in the sand or wherever isn't going to solve the problems that we've got here in Christchurch. And I would suggest to you that after 2 years, people know that we still haven't got a recovery underway, and they need to ask the question, why?
Okay, we'll ask why when I come back after the break. Talking with Hugh is like having my own little Olympic. Hey, listen, Hugh, now let's think about some of your key planks. Is that, of course, we've had the council with its communication plan out, and it was found very damning, and I don't think anybody was being surprised. But can I put it to you, do you think the communication from some of the other agencies is that smart? If we ran an audit through them, would they stand the same scrutiny?
No, none of them probably would. They'd probably get an E or an F, the whole lot of them, I think. But really what we need to sort of focus on, Joe, and I know there are problems with other agencies, but we have one major problem here in Christchurch, a major one that's gone on for a long, long time. That's been our council. We had a disaster, the earthquakes and all the rest of it, and we're in no shape to deal with it. This is why half these other agencies are in there, like Sarah to the extent it is, and then if you like, we've got these distractions, constant distractions with our dysfunctional council, that these other issues aren't being dealt with, like insurances and people in their homes and all the rest of it. So we've had a terrible job, if you like, trying to prioritise. And actually the Bishop of Christchurch brought that up in the press there just a couple of days ago, that we're not prioritising with people in their homes because of all these other distractions.
She was probably trying to score some brownie points, but I mean, you cannot keep dismissing, can you? You know, TC3 is, oh, they don't understand, or it's complex. You can't. They're like a new group of poor people in the district. I mean, what I don't understand is there are too many groups that have set up. There are too many groups working out of the community. There are people willing to protest, and it is not rent a crowd. I mean, I just resent it when anyone says that, because I think if one person turns up, then that's good enough. What do you think has to happen now? You know, that, I mean, if the focus is going on the city and the citizens have to pay for it, what do we need to do to get some traction out? And when I talk about the East, we always talk right across the board, we're not talking about the Brightons, that we're talking from the Port Hills right out to Kaiapoi.
I think the most important thing we've got to realise, Joe, is that we get the politicians and the political system that we deserve and demand.
But Hugh, that's not going to happen. They're not going to get rid of the council. They've got another layer over that, and they've got all the powers. So they can just get the council. Well, look at the way they're treating them. Look at the way at the launch, where they hardly mentioned the council. In fact, it was an oversight by the Prime Minister and what have you, and then it was like the afterthought. But yet they turn in and say, hey, here's our plan, and by the way, council, you deliver it and give us the money. I mean, what sort of rubbish is that?
Of course it's rubbish, Joe. We all know, well, thinking people know that, but what we've got to ask ourselves is a question, how much longer are the people of Christchurch going to tolerate it? We do live in a democracy after all, and those people, the whole lot of them, are accountable to us. They are our servants. We'll put, putting aside the Sarah legislation and all the rest of it, but Brownlee himself is going to be held to account at some stage.
But aren't people tired?
Yes,
like apathy. I've always said apathy is, not me, I probably pinched it from somewhere, is apathy is local government and government's best friend. And people are tired, and people have had enough, and they want to get on with their lives with some semblance of normality, and they're dismissing that. So they're going to leave groups like yourself. We need some more champions, don't we?
Not really, Joe. I think it's all just going fine. I know for a fact that as an advocate, and I've been an advocate on local government issues for 2 decades now, since the time I was president for the Property Council here in the South Island. And I am very, very heartened, if you like, by the amount of public engagement that is actually going on, the public conversation that's going on. I'm most impressed. I'm most impressed with the work that you good people are doing at CTV, the great work that the press people are doing. Excellent. And also the national media, Close Up, Campbell Live, the whole lot of them. Now, that's the important part, Joe, is that we have this excellent public conversation of these issues, and out of that it'll come, if you like, hopefully a better democracy here in Christchurch.
Well, it'll be interesting what David Carter comes out with, because there's a decision imminent, and I'm going to crystal ball gaze and saying we're going to be treated differently from the rest of the country, and we'll have a model like the Health Board, and again, no democracy because we're such a basket case, but it means that we're governed by the government instead of local. Can I ask you though, I've nearly forgotten what the question was, can I ask you though that it just seems that these politicians are not understanding the social connectiveness. And why is that?
Obviously, the reason for that is that they're clearly not getting the message, I should say. They are not getting the message clearly enough. They're clearly not, because if they're not responding, after all, if you like, that is a House of Representatives. They are our representatives. If they're not representing us, Joe, we must change them. It's our responsibility as citizens to do that.
What I don't understand, they drive the same roads, if they are driving them. They know that there are people out in that community in houses that they should not be living in. And they know that we're about to have an influx of men or people to come in and help in this building. And, well, who would know? No. I mean, the immigration. There seems to be, you know, you can draw a pretty box and put the layers in it. There seems to be no one actually pulling it all together in any kind of way. Do you get a sense that we are actually on track?
No, we're not at all. And I think most people realise that. It's still now 2 years later, nearly 2 years later, after the first earthquake events in September 2010, we have still not effectively got a recovery underway in this city. Our build rates on residential construction are absolutely woeful. By now, we should have an extra 6,000 odd homes out on the fringes of Christchurch if we'd had affordable land, for example. That hasn't happened. And that's a very, very key thing, and that's something, again, the Bishop of Christchurch spoke about just the other day. Now,
you in Victoria must be like that.
Well, that's exactly right. Too much more of this, and I think I'll convert to
You'll be doing
Anglicanism.
the job, exactly.
Yes. Yeah. So, but the fact of the matter is, it is becoming, I think, increasingly apparent to people that things are not working, and it's really going to be up to the people themselves. After all, this is the people's city. We're the ones that really own this city, and if you like, those who govern us are simply a reflection of us. If they're not performing, that's our problem.
Why can we get something like Skirt, you know, who is working the infrastructure team underneath, who seem, although I still think their communication could be a hell of a lot better by breaking things down small. If they can work, the communication's got to be the key, you know, and it's got to be two-way, doesn't it?
Most definitely, people have got to be honest with each other, right across up and down the food chain, if you like, Joe. And that simply isn't happening. I mean, we had this so-called blueprint of the city, this candy floss sort of stuff on the Monday night. Now, really, when you're going to be committing, say, something up to 1.6 billion, which is only a rough estimate at this stage, with no research and not even telling the people who are going to be paying for it, the details of it, well, quite frankly, in a democracy, that is obscene.
And on that note, keep watching the Olympics, because remember, it's only every 4 years. And in 4 years' time, I think that most of you should be in new homes. Thank you for joining us one-on-one. Thanks, Hugh.
Thanks, Joe.